Welcome to Bigfoot Society. If you have Bigfoot activity to report from the same areas discussed in this episode, please reach out to me directly after this episode. And if you'd like to be on the podcast to discuss a personal Bigfoot encounter, please reach out to me directly at bigfootsociety@gmail.com. Do you wish there was more Bigfoot Society to listen to every week? Well, there is now. If you become a supporting member over at Patreon, you get a special members-only episode every single week on Wednesdays, and sometimes even more episodes. Head on over to patreon.com/The Bigfoot Society. And now let's get on with the show. All right, Bigfoot Society, we've got the privilege of talking to Mr. Jonathan Brown from Washington State. You may know him from his channel with, of course, Sarah Brown, but we've got Jonathan here today, Salish Sasquatch. And welcome to the show, Jonathan.
Hey, thanks for having me, Jeremiah.
Dude, let me talk. I'm going to talk about your channel for a little bit. When I see one come out, it is an emergency, drop everything, and then nothing else. It's like I saw the Highway 12 one the other day. Oh my goodness, it was so. I love it because like I've never seen places like Packwood before, so it's very cool for me to see that. And you guys just do a great job. So I mean, I'm going to have it in the show notes. People. I know most of my listeners are already watching Salish Sasquatch because it's really good. But if you're not, you need to check it out, guys. So that is.
Hey, thanks for saying.
Did they take down one of your videos the other day?
I think it was just like a YouTube glitch because we put it up initially, and then it said that it was removed by a user. And in order to remove it by the user, like you got to go into edit, you got to go to delete, and then you got to confirm delete. Neither of us did that, and so it just it was there, and then it was gone. But it's up, it's running fine.
Nice, yeah. Everyone needs to check that out. Also, you may have heard about Jonathan and Sarah, but you just maybe didn't realize it. They used to be. They would be referred on the Sasquatch Chronicles podcast as the Brown property, correct?
Yeah.
So, Jonathan, do you mind you've been going through a lot on your property over the years. Do you mind sharing what you've experienced in that it's a Chehalis Reservation, correct?
Yes. So it was in 2012. It must have been about like 8:30, 9 o'clock. I know it was in the fall, maybe October or so of 2012. And I'm going out to the car to get something. And when I come outside, like it smells funny outside. It smells kind of like a skunk mixed with something very foul. And, you know, with it being that long, I don't really remember what that foul smell in combination with the skunkish smell was. But it was bad. And so I go out to the car, and then from one side of the property, I hear this. And then I'm like, okay, that wasn't a bird that just whistled right there. And then from the opposing side of the property, I hear a response. That's another. And I'm like, oh, man. Like I've lived on this reservation most of my life, and I've heard all kinds of stories. I've always believed in Bigfoot. But at that point in time, I thought, like, you know, having a Bigfoot encounter, you got to go like freaking deep in the mountains to have something happen, even though I've heard like local stories all my life. But it was after that point that my brother Ben and we started spending some time outside and just listening and sitting by the fire. And that's kind of when everything started unfolding.
That's wild. How far out are you guys from other people, or do you have neighbors pretty close, or what's kind of the area like?
Closest neighbors are probably about like a quarter mile away.
Okay.
And we're right by the Chehalis River as well. And there's, you know, a creek behind our property. And so there's it's kind of a point like where we live, it's kind of like where wilderness meets like, you know, agriculture area, because you can go up in the nearby areas where, you know, it's dense forest for a long ways, all the way to like, you know, Willapa Bay. But like where we are, like it's not necessarily a place that, somebody would think that Sasquatches frequent.
I just talked to a guy from your area. We were talking about it before the show started, and listeners have already heard this. It's Rick. He's saying that Capitol State Forest has a ton of stuff in there. Is that correct? Or
I mean, the 1982 Grays Harbor tracks, they were taken about 10 miles away from here as the crow flies. And I've heard people that like Bigfooters talk about Capitol State Forest as if it's a dead zone. But the only reason that I think that they say that is because like there's only 2 or 3 different campgrounds in Capitol State Forest. And so there's also no dispersed camping allowed. So I think that's one of the reasons is, people that want to go looking for Sasquatch, they go to areas where they can like do dispersed camping and get kind of deep, but that's not really available in Capitol Forest. But I don't see any reason why the Sasquatches wouldn't be in Capitol Forest.
Gotcha.
And they've been there before, but some of the best tracks were cast right outside of there. So I don't see why not,
Definitely. So then after you experience this sound back and forth, you guys start to get into it pretty hardcore after that, or is it kind of like a slow burn type deal?
No, we started immediately getting into it. And my brother Ben and I, we had spent a lot of time outside just listening, heard a lot of stuff. But it was in April of 2013 that my wife Sarah and I, we started, trying to take things to the next level. I mean, we're just freaking noobs when it came to Bigfoot, but we would, for, I don't know, it must have been several days, we were hearing stuff, and we started trying to like leave food on the edge of this tree line. And for all I know, we were feeding raccoons and coyotes, whatever. But it was an attempt to try to feed Sasquatch, not knowing anything about them. And in April of 2013, when we were approaching that tree line one evening, I remember it was the first week of April. I don't know which day it was, but we hear all this. We hear all this commotion. There's multiple vocalizations going off. I don't remember if it was rock clacking or if there was knocks, but there was multiple individuals back there. And as we start getting into the tree line, there's a commotion off to my left, and I look over, and I see a Sasquatch moving towards a tree. And it's still light out at this time. It's like close to where the sun's coming down, and it's shaded enough to where like I couldn't make out any like facial features. I could tell that the Sasquatch's face was dark, but there was enough sunlight that was coming through the trees where I could see like coloration to where it was like a reddish brown. But those were the details that I was noticing. And in my mid-20s, in my early to mid-20s, I worked construction, so I know that a door frame is 6'8". And when it was crouching, like moving back and forth behind a tree, it looked to me like I was about close to 100 feet away from it, maybe a little bit more. And it looked to me like, even crouched down, that it was about the size of a door frame. So if it was standing erect, I don't know, maybe 7.5, 8 feet tall, I don't know. But it seemed like that kind of happened for a long time. But realistically, like that sighting probably was about a minute. And when I was looking at it, I was telling Sarah, I was like, it's right there. But I wasn't looking at it square on, like feeling cocky or anything like that. Like I was very intimidated. Like I would look at it in the corner of my eye, and then I would look at it, and then I'd just kind of have to. It was kind of like a little kid that is scared, that's being bullied, even though it wasn't bullying me. I was just that intimidated by it when I would look at it. And finally, I'm telling Sarah to look at it. She won't look at it. And then I'm like, well, I don't want to be here. We're leaving right now. And we were flustered. And then that was that. But when I was looking at it, it started, the last that I remember when I was looking at it, it started like crouching to the side of the tree, like crouching lower and lower and lower. And the last time that I looked at it, it was it had to have been laying on the ground at that point.
So it really affected you guys. I mean, this is on your home property.
Yeah, just right outside of it. And after that April, it seemed like nothing happened after that sighting. It seemed like nothing happened until it was the very tail end of August or the beginning of September of 2013. That stuff started picking up again. Sarah and I had our bedroom window open one night, and Sarah woke me up. It must have been like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. She's like, "Listen to that howling out there." And I'm half asleep, and I'm like, okay, but I'm not, at that point, I wasn't hearing what she was hearing. And my brother Ben and I would go out and make fires, and stuff started happening again. And then Sarah had reached out to the Olympic Project, which was at the time Derek Randalls and David Ellis. And I don't remember who the members were back then, but Derek and David were the main guys. And Derek had talked to Sarah over the phone and came out and met with us. And he left us with a thermal device that didn't have internal recording capability. And I know that Sarah's going to be coming on here, so I am going to step on the story. She could tell it again when she's on your podcast. But this kind of paints the picture for like the beginning of it. And we were outside one night after he had left that device that didn't record, and we were just standing in the back of the yard, just, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes. And then there's this banging, and it's like this metallic sound that is behind us. And we're like, oh man. We run to the back porch of the house, just scared. And then finally I muster up the courage to go get a flashlight, and then I grabbed my pistol. It's not like I was intending to like shoot anything, but just for security. And so I'm walking back over to where that metallic banging came from, because it was very close to us. And then this wasn't the only thing that I saw, but I shined my light right in its eyes, but it was just for a fraction of a second. And I bolted back to the house right after that. Like, that was too much. I wasn't ready for that. And then Sarah grabbed the thermal camera that didn't have the recording capability, and she was looking at it. She was like, John, it's swaying back and forth right now. And I didn't look at it through the thermal camera. I saw the eyes. And then I was like, all right, well, take a picture with your cell phone. And she put her cell phone up to the device, took a picture. If you look at the picture, and she'll go over more detail with you on that when she's on your podcast, but it only makes sense like in proper context if you're explaining what was happening. But at that point, it was behind some blackberry bushes, and you could see it standing up. And David Ellis later went there with a scale pole, and it was much larger than he was. So that was one thing that happened. After we had told Derek and David about that, Derek brought another thermal camera out that did have like onboard recording, and it seemed like it was coming from somewhere where might have been coming from California or something like that. And we had that. So that was in September, and we had the next device in October. We had played around with it, like thinking it was cool and stuff like that, but not that many times. And it was on October 30th of 2013. There was this rancher. He had like, that's at the point where the field behind us, there was a rancher that was leasing it. And that's the point where he was moving his cows to another field because it floods down there. And so a lot of the cows were making quite a bit of commotion. And they were just like, making crying cow sounds, just whining and stuff like that. It was really loud. So we didn't even put out audio that night. And it was just before midnight, I believe, that there was even though the cows were right behind us, they were being loud. There was this tapping on a tree, like this light tapping that I heard. And so I grabbed the thermal camera that my brother Ben and I had back there. And at first I'm looking back there. I see the cows through thermal and everything, but I see something laying on the ground, and it looks like a humanoid head. And I'm like, okay, hold on. And I'm trying to figure out which button is record. It had changed positions. It wasn't laying on the ground anymore. It was behind this berm that drops down about 12, 13 feet, but it's a gentle berm. And so at this point, you're looking at it from the chest up, getting cut off by the berm. And I'm thinking that I'm recording at this point, and I'm not recording. I'm taking snapshots. And I hand the camera over to my brother Ben, and that's when we got a thermal video of it.
You have on your YouTube channel Salish Sasquatch as well, correct?
Yes, and if you look at the uploads, it's the very first upload at the bottom of the page. Gotcha. On videos. About
the same time frame, you started to capture some interesting audio in like October.
Yeah, that actually happened at the exact same time after Derek came out, because David came out afterwards and had set up some audio recorders, and he introduced Sarah to how to record and everything like that. So she would set out the audio and make sure everything was running every night. And yeah, during that time span that I just talked about, from September to beyond October, like, we had good recordings. I think it was even in May of 2014 where audio was captured, but David had set Sarah up with audio. He had an audio tent. He had a parabolic dish, and he even taught her how to review audio on the spectrogram through, I don't know which program it was, but she got pretty good at it.
That's awesome. Let's try to play some of these. These are looped 5 times, most of them, correct? A few of them are?
Possibly, whatever it says on there.
Okay, gotcha. All right, I'm going to play the creepy singing, and then if you have any commentary on that, we'll let you do that. Here we go.
So there were so many things that we heard in the span of 2013 to 14, because my brother Ben and I, we would stay out late until 12 o'clock, sometimes 1 o'clock, even on work days. But I don't particularly remember that one specifically. It's possible that I had heard it live, but I don't remember hearing that one live. There was just a lot that had happened. But on some of the other clips that I sent you, I just like that one that you just played because it's one of my favorites. But on the other ones that I sent you, I was there.
Gotcha. And why is the one that we just played one of your favorites, would you say?
I just like the singing ones. I mean, they're not that common. I've heard them before, but I really like the unique audio clips.
Absolutely. This one says the branch break display, so we'll play this one here.
Man, I don't get light. I'm gonna loop around the side.
So on that one, David Ellis, he always reviewed the audio that we had to, make sure it wasn't like anything that was a known animal or things like that. And he would send us back the clips that were interesting. He calls that one a branch break display. That wasn't branches breaking. When Ben and I heard that, it was rocks that were being clacked together on the other side of the road.
Really?
And so that's why you hear at the end of the audio clip, me and Ben are kind of flustered at that point and trying to get our lights and everything like that. And then that's when you hear us say, like, I'm going to loop around the side on the side of the house. We go loop around to the side of the house, and we're looking around because we were familiar with rock clacking by that. We had heard it quite a few times. And we go to as soon as we get into the field that's next to the house and we're shining our lights across the road, there's these light greenish yellow eyes that our lights are reflecting off of. And I mean, this is 6 feet up on the other side of the road at least, but there's another berm that drops down over there as well. And I don't know how long we were kind of having a little bit of a standoff for, but I would guess that it was, between 30 and 40 seconds or so, and then it just dropped down and moved out. But that was that clip right there.
I remember talking to Shane Corson about the Olympic nest area and how he had found actual like rocks that were clacked together. Have you found anything like that on your property ever?
I haven't found that, but one thing I will say about the rocks being clacked together is we heard rock clacking way more often than we'd hear any wood knocks. And what was kind of convenient about that is, like, with rocks being clacked together, like, it's easier to the times that we have attempted like making wood knocks to see if we could get like a response, we never had any luck with that. But with rock clacking, we did, because we could hear the cadence that they would be clacking together and stuff, and we would try to do it the same way. But yeah, there was far more rock clacking than wood knocks that we've experienced.
Have you noticed that there are different patterns that will arise different times of the year, or do they kind of sound similar all the way through?
I mean, I've heard them spread out a little bit, but the most common that I've ever heard is bang, 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 like that, like fast, not like what was on the recording.
Oh, wow. And do you think that's down by the river, or hard to say?
Oh, that rock clacking that we had just heard on the clip was right across the road from us.
Okay.
Like directly across from our property.
You got another one in October here, and this one says unintelligible voice, so I'm going to go ahead and play that.
Yeah, so I remember.
Cool.
Okay, so on that one, I was walking outside, and the audio was rolling. I walk outside and I hear that. And immediately when I heard that, like right by the gazebo where we make a fire and everything like that, in the back of the property, I hear that from over there as soon as I'm walking out of the door. And I'm just like, nope. It sounded like little girls that were singing. And to me, that was like scarier than like a Sasquatch or anything like that. Because if there was like, there'd be no reason for any little girls to be back in the woods at that time of night, like singing. But that was like freaking creepy to me. So I heard that and I was just like, nope, I'm going in.
That would be very creepy. Is the activity that's on your property, does it seem like it is just Sasquatch, or sometimes you hear stories where like stuff will happen inside the house and it's just a whole different ball of wax, or do you not have to deal with that stuff?
Oh, we haven't had like any hauntings or anything like that. Like, I mean, there's weird stuff that has happened just like other people have had it happen, but really want to get into like the paranormal, but it's not anything that's ever been prevalent, you know?
Oh yeah, no problem. No problem. Yeah, no problem.
I mean, I guess what I'm gonna clarify, like there has been times that twice that I've woken up and I thought that I saw a ghost, but I don't know that I was in a dream state because I had just woken up, and you know, you could be partly awake, partly asleep, and you think you see something, but that in no way do I like know for sure that that was what I saw.
Gotcha. Yeah, there can be some, a lot of people report like shadows out of the corner of their eyes, stuff like that. You also have another one here where it's screams from November. I'm gonna play that one here. All right.
Okay, so on that one, I don't know whether I heard that live or not. It's just one of my favorite audio clips that we have. So I can't say either way if I heard that one in person or not.
Is that something that is heard a lot on that property, those screams, or?
I mean, it's not very common. Like during 2013 and 14, there was a period where it seemed like that kind of activity it just seemed like the Sasquatch were a lot more active than, like, we didn't have anything happen that was that obvious beforehand. And, you know, being aware of them afterwards. Yeah, we've heard stuff. We've gotten recordings afterwards, but it not as condensed as it was from, 2000, from like September to, I would say, May of 2014. September of 2013 to May of 2014 was a super hot time. And I don't know what was going on. I don't know if that's some type of pattern with Sasquatch. I don't know what they were up to. I can't pretend to know. All that I know is there was more that happened during that period than I've ever experienced before. And during that time, I thought like, man, it's easy to see a Sasquatch, but no, I haven't seen one since.
Okay, so you have that initial sighting, and then after that, not really many sightings on the property. Sounds like.
Well, there was the initial sighting. There was a time that I flashed my light in its eyes when it was close by banging on the pot. There was the time that Ben and I had heard that you had just played the audio clip of the rock clacking across the road, and we shine our light in its eyes. And then there's the thermal video that happened on October 30th. So as far as sightings, that would be all that I have during that time.
Gotcha.
And I have not seen a Sasquatch since.
Is this something where do you ever talk to your neighbors at all? Do they have similar things going on their property as well, or?
Oh yeah, like the people that live up the road from us. There's one guy that spends more time than anybody, like fishing and hunting, right where we are, down by the river, not on our property, but like close by. And I was thinking, like, after things first started, I was like, man, and I'm not going to say his name, but I'm going to talk to this guy, because if anybody has experienced anything Bigfoot related on the reservation, it's him. And I called him up and asked him about it. He was kind of hesitant to really talk about it at first. And then he was like, yeah, I've seen him. And he tells me when the last time was. I think it was like 5 years before that or something like that. But he had seen them several times, like throughout his life, and he had some good stories. I'm not going to share those because they're just not mine to share, and I don't know if he would be comfortable with me sharing them. But that really, it just made me feel better knowing that, like, okay, it's not just us. Like, obviously, you live close to us. You're spending a lot of time by the river. You spend a lot of time hunting. You're spending more time than anybody else outside, and you've never told me your stories before, but you were hesitant to tell me at first, and then you finally did.
You've had multiple years to think about this and to look into this and study audio, remember what you saw. How do you view the Sasquatch? Is it a thing where, do you view it more as like an ape type creature, or maybe some sort of human creature, or is it just hard to explain for you?
Well, I mean, initially I just kind of thought of it as a Sasquatch, like kind of ape, kind of human, you know? And then it must have been about 2015 or 16. I think it had to do with a little bit of burnout and frustration. And I was thinking, like, man, there's got to be something more to this. Like, these things have got to be paranormal, because if anybody would have seen them again, it would be me. And that's just frustration because it wasn't happening like it was in 2013 and 14. But after taking a little cooling off period, like after about 2015 to 2020, I wasn't doing anything Bigfoot related. But over that time, over that cooling off period, it was like, okay, well, I've never experienced Sasquatch do anything paranormal. I've seen a Sasquatch. It looked like a live creature, a living creature that would do things that you would think it would. Mm. But I'm back to square one, where I just think that a Sasquatch is a Sasquatch, whether that's a little bit ape, a little bit human, I don't know, but they're real.
You took about a 5 years off, which is a pretty substantial time frame. What made you go back into it in 2020?
I just kind of missed the adventure.
Mm. You started to go out again, or just kind of sticking to your property and seeing what you could find?
Well, going outside and, making fires, like trying to, hear stuff, and we would not as often as in 2013 and 14, but we would hear stuff. But then also, camping out with friends that we had in the past that were into Bigfoot and going to different areas, and, it hasn't stopped since then.
So ever since you got back into it in 2020, you start to experience things again?
Yeah, but during that 5-year cooling off period, it wasn't like I was spending any time outside. I was spending time outside. I wasn't spending time outside at night. Mm. But after 2020, yeah, started going on camping trips and going to different places. And, if you're in a really good spot, there's a 10% chance that something's going to happen if it's a really, really good spot. But more often than not, you just got to going camping and hanging out with folks that are like-minded, and the trip will be enjoyable. But every once in a while, stuff happens,
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I feel very similar. I have not been to Washington yet. I've been to Oregon, and it is at the end of the day, it's a fun time hanging out with friends, but also you get to throw Bigfoot in there. That's even better. But do you have any really cool trips that stick out that you were able to go on when you started going out after 2020?
Well, actually, in 2020, there was a big camp out that Bart Catino had attended, and a bunch of people were there. And that was when Shane Corson and myself, along with some other people, Todd Hale was there. We were at this place in the Cascade Range, where it was my second night there, and Shane was like, "Oh, come over to my camp over here." I mean, yeah, we heard some stuff last night, and so I go there. Shane and I are just like catching up around the fire and talking, and then we hear this whoop, probably about 100 feet away from us, and then we just look at each other like neither of us are talking, and then we do talk about it afterwards, but that probably came from about 100 feet away, and then 20 minutes later, this tree gets pushed over, and this is in late August, and so it's not like it was windy out or anything. Is it possible that a dead tree just fell down? Yes, but in a 20-minute time frame of hearing a whoop, that's quite the coincidence if that happened as well, you know.
Yeah, and you can actually hear this audio if you go over to the Salish Sasquatch channel, and it's in the Highway 12 documentary video that just came out, and it is, I mean, that tree being pushed over is intense.
Yeah, that was a crazy night, and you know, that being close to the time that I started getting back into everything. When it's that intense, a lot of people would interpret that as like, oh, the Sasquatch were getting really aggressive with you guys. Was it unnerving when it happened? Yeah, a little bit, but it wasn't like terrifying or anything, because that tree that came down was at a little bit of a distance, you know, outside of camp.
Mm.
So in my opinion, I just think that the Sasquatch were trying to flex, like, man, you guys need to get out of here, please.
Exactly. Yeah, if anyone was by that tree, they would have been just absolutely demolished. It sounded massive. The other, I like that video too, because it goes over one of my favorite places to get reports from, which is the Packwood area.
Oh man.
Oh my goodness. I've heard some of the wildest things I've ever heard come out of that area. Why do you think it's such a crazy Sasquatch area in Packwood?
Well, I think it is in the wintertime. I mean, Packwood has activity, as far as I know, year round based on reports. But I think the reason that like there's so many roadside crossings and such like that in the wintertime is because you take areas like a Bumping Lake, Rimrock Lake, that, you know, get a lot of snow, Goat Rocks Wilderness,
Mm-hmm.
and, you know, up the mountains above Packwood as well, like over by like where Wallop Lake is, areas where Sasquatch are, you know, seen and heard. There's so much snow at the time, so they kind of funnel down. And this is just a theory, because Packwood's a much lower elevation, and at that time of the year, all the elk are in the town of Packwood at that time. So I just think that, like, in the wintertime, I think you're dealing with multiple groups that are in the vicinity, so it's easier to have an encounter.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think there's definitely something to the elk theory. I heard that get thrown around down in the Cascades in Oregon, where I was by a few hunters at Sasquatch Summerfest. It's like, you know where the elk are at a certain time of the year, you probably know where the Sasquatch are. You know, I want to talk a little bit more about your channel. Do you have any? What are maybe some of the favorite videos that you guys have done so far on Salish Sasquatch?
So the one that we recently did from Packwood, it's called the Highway 12 corridor.
Mm-hmm.
And the tree getting pushed down, that was the first one that I did. And Sarah had, like, I helped Sarah film, you know, all of the videos, except she's been doing all the editing since. But the very first I did was the Cascades encounter, and that's the full detail of what happened where that whoop and that tree came down, because it wasn't just us that were experiencing stuff. Like, there was other people that were experiencing stuff on the perimeter as well that were away from us, and they got different recordings. So it was kind of where just a lot of stories were lined up and recorded them and put something together. But that one's called the Cascades encounter.
You guys are super smart, because from what I've noticed as a content creator, I mean, you have a lot of, well, you're in the area, so you have access to, your friends from that area, people like, Shane Corson, and you just get a lot of really good people sharing encounters, which I'm a super fan of. And I mean, the growth on the channel has really been impressive. I mean, what do you got? I think you're up to like, was it 40K maybe around there right now?
Yeah. I think we just went over 45 today.
Whew, nice. And it's because like the quality is really good. I can't think, I can't think of anyone that even comes close right now, because like you are in the state, you're able to have all these connections, and like you can, what's the furthest you probably travel for one of your videos? Maybe like 4 or 5 hours, or how much travel are you putting in for these?
I think the longest one was about 5 hours.
Okay.
But that was when we went to go record John Andrews, and I had never met him before or anything like that, but I've always heard a lot about him. And he's one of the old timers that just has stories that have to be heard.
I feel the same way. It is constantly weighing on me. If you think about how old the guys that had stuff happen in the 70s are, they are headed out really quick. And it's like, that's why I talk to so many people as much as I can, because these guys, like, their stories are going away with them, right? Even the guys that were like doing stuff in the 90s, those guys are getting old too. Whenever you get to talk to someone who has never talked before, there's just something special about that. Can you share, like, what kind of setup tech-wise do you guys usually use when you're out doing interviews?
Well, we use Movo mics for when we do wireless recording.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, like, we shoot everything on our iPhones. Sarah has a DJI, I think it's called the Osmo. I think it's the Osmo 2. It has like a built-in gimbal on it, so that like it can follow like faces and stuff like that. But other than that, just a DJI drone.
What is I have favorite places myself. When you hear someone, they reach out to you and they're like, I have stories from a certain area. Is there a certain area in the state of Washington where if they say this area, you're like, oh man, this is going to be great?
Yeah. You're asking like my favorite areas that it comes from?
Yeah. I mean, and if it's giving anything away, you don't have to, but.
No, I mean, like, part of what, like, when people do videos with us on our channel and they want their location, to remain unknown, like we honor that, and we don't want to expose it.
Exactly.
But part of what we do on our channel is share Bigfoot areas, because it's like all these Sasquatch researchers, they're like, oh, this is my area. This is my area. It's like, it's not your freaking area. Like, if there was more people that were aware of where to go, then there would be more evidence that was gathered by people that were into the hobby of it, And we just feel like by sharing different areas on our channel, that it enhances the probability of some of the next best evidence to, come through. Not that it's going to come through us, but we're trying to let people know where to have encounters.
That's awesome. Do you have a place that is kind of on your bucket list that maybe, maybe someday you guys get to go there and do something?
Outside of Washington, I would say there's some pockets in Oklahoma.
That would be cool. If I could put in, I'm going to put in a request, but I don't think you guys have done it yet. But it would be really interesting. Have you done like the Lake Cushman area yet?
Yeah, we have a video called Bigfoot Airbnb.
Oh, right.
And,
yeah,
well,
it's right outside. Yeah, totally. I forgot about that.
It's right on Dow Mountain, and the owners there have had all kinds of experiences, and as well as people in the surrounding area. But man, the Lake Cushman area, I think, is one of the hottest areas in the state.
Oh yeah, I mean, and I forgot Dow is right next to it. So, I mean, I've talked to this dude. His name is Lynn Gaspar. Oh my goodness, that
Actually,
guy.
we had
You know Lynn?
we met him in Tacoma and recorded with him,
Really?
but we had a complete audio failure.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah.
He is wild, dude. The stuff that he told me about. Did he tell you his Lake Cushman account?
Oh, I wasn't listening that time. I was just trying to film like B-roll that Sarah was recording. So I'm not familiar with any of his. I'm not familiar with any of his encounters, but I've heard he has really good stories.
That Lake Cushman area is just absolutely bonkers. And I mean, yeah, that Dow, man, when I saw that and I was like, I bet that Airbnb, well, which is probably the idea. I mean, I'm sure that would be a crazy place to stay at. Hopefully those Airbnb owners have gotten some sweet connections through your videos. But yeah, that's a really good video. That is one of my favorites. But
and especially when you're getting out in the wintertime, when it's not necessarily the most convenient to go camping, you can find Airbnbs in a lot of Sasquatch hot zones and still sleep comfortably that night, but stay outside as much as you want as well,
Yeah, that's a good point. Because, I mean, you could go out and you could try to, do the crazy camping.
I'm just not a fan of like wet and cold camping. Like, when it's snowing and it's raining, no thanks.
Yeah, I mean, it's something you got to take seriously. I mean, the weather up there can change really quickly. So that's, you want to make sure you have your safety in order for sure. But Jonathan, it has been a fun chat with you. I'm glad.
Yeah, likewise.
I'm glad we were able to get you on the show. We'll talk to Sarah, hopefully a little bit. Maybe in a little bit later we'll have her set up a time. But I just love what you guys are doing. It's important that you guys are capturing the accounts, capturing the areas, and you guys do such a good job on it. And definitely keep up the great work. The channel is so fun just to watch as it grows. So keep that up, man. And thank you for hanging out tonight.
Thank you, Jeremiah. I appreciate that.
Just want to take a few minutes to say thank you to you, all my listeners, for listening to the podcast. Please take a minute to help out the show by subscribing on YouTube, making sure you hit the bell so you don't miss any notifications, and share the episode on YouTube with a friend. Also, if you're listening to us on a podcast, thank you so much. Make sure that you're subscribed, share the show with a friend. Really, it's all about sharing the show wherever you can. If you've had a Bigfoot encounter related to the following or know someone who has, please reach out to me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com or pass on my email. Here's a list: the Subtle Lake area of Oregon, Rainbow, Oregon, McKinsey Bridge area, Sweet Home, pretty much that entire area, the north part, if you get what I mean. I'll see you back next time, listeners. Sasquatch Summerfest this year, July 11th through the 12th. It's going to be fantastic. July 11th through 12th in Green Waters Park in Oak Ridge, Oregon. And listeners, if you're going to go, you can get a 2-day ticket for the cost of one if you use the code BFS, like Bigfoot Society, but BFS. And it'll get you some off your cost. Priscilla was nice enough to provide that for my listeners. So there you go. I look forward to seeing you there. So make sure you head over to www.sasquatchsummerfest.com and pick up your tickets today.